Hey there, welcome to the channel. Alright, you want to study languages? Have a seat. No, have a seat, don't make me get the sword. Okay, repeat after me. Deus vult. What you looking at me like that for? I'm teaching languages. It's Latin, it's a language. Look it up. Oh, I look weird. What are you, some kind of heathen? Deus vult. Alright, let me fix the microphone because for some reasons with the helmet on, it just wouldn't focus on me. A man can't even wear a great helm these days. Anyways, we are back with a man and his language reviews, Language Simp. We are simps of Language Simp, and today we're checking out his review of Spanish. I'm ready, I'm so ready. Let's go.
Hola a todos y bienvenidos a mi canal. Para los que no me conocen, yo me llamo Language Simp, soy de Estados Unidos y soy un macho alfa hiperpolíglota gigachad.
Macho.
Hoy vamos a hablar sobre el idioma español, or Despacito language as it's formally called. This is the 4th episode of Language Review, a series where I go through the languages of the world and review them, sort of like a film critic or a video game reviewer, but for languages, specifically from the perspective of a language learner. I'll discuss who speaks them, their grammar, their difficulty, and tons of other stuff before finally giving them an...
I love how the grammar is always a different thing. Sometimes it's fake rules, sometimes it's cringe rules. So far, cringe rules is my favorite definition.
Official Language Simp certified rating on the Simp scale. If you enjoy this video, let me know in the comments which language you'd like me to review next. And without further ado, let's begin.
Yeah.
I'm just a stupid gringa. I failed my Spanish classes with...
Señor González de los Reyes.
I couldn't survive a day in Mexico. I'm a gringo and I learned Spanish, and there's more to it than just Mexico. It's the language of Becky G, Carol G, Bad Bunny, telenovelas, the third best soccer player, and much more.
Telenovelas, I so relate to that because Italy is also like that. Like my mom used to watch telenovelas like her life depended on it. And it's like if whatever the heck his name is, Ron Moss, would break up with the girl, then she would be like upset. She would be like, seriously, you'd be like, Mom, you okay? It's like, oh yeah, it's Ridge, she left him for Torn, whatever the heck his name was. So populous.
Spanish is spoken by over 550...
Sorry if I'm pausing a lot, but that's Italian right there. Zucchero. It means sugar. I wonder, I mean, that was random.
50 million people worldwide in over 20 diverse and unique countries, so learning Spanish will unlock an unfathomable amount of DLC to explore. The most notable piece of content you'll unlock is indisputably the GigaChad African nation of Equatorial Guinea, located only 500 miles southwest of mainland Chad. Basically, in the second millennium, Spain decided to pull in England and colonize a huge part of the world, which allowed them to spread their language to almost everywhere in the Americas, resulting in every country highlighted on this map speaking Spanish in the present day. You may be wondering, why is that giant, mysterious, and abnormal growth jutting out of South America not highlighted? Well, the Spaniards missed that country entirely. It's called Brazil now, and they don't speak Spanish there. They speak spicy Spanish. However,
Hey, yes! Could you imagine, for an alternative history situation, if you replaced the crown of Spain with, say, Italy? Like now, I wonder what type of Italian they would be speaking. Like, what would it sound like? Because, of course, in Italy, we've got so many different dialects and accents, and you could say languages. I mean, a Sicilian sounds different from someone from Milan, Florentine, Neapolitan. We already sound very, very different. So it would be so fascinating to see what someone from the other side of the world would sound like if their native tongue was Italian, but it's like, I don't know what you call it, like colonial Italian, I guess. That would be so interesting. But I'm saying, imagine that.
It's called Brazil now, and they don't speak Spanish there. They speak spicy Spanish.
Spicy.
However, I honestly think that Spanish should be called Mexican, because Mexico is the country with the most Spanish speakers in the world at over 120 million, while Spain only has around 40 million. And frankly, Spain should be embarrassed, because even the United States of Freedom, a majority American-speaking country, has more Spanish speakers than Spain at over 50 million. I personally think that we should just open our southern border entirely, because Tejas used to belong to Mexico anyway. It's only fair. there. But in the meantime, millions of people are tragically being arrested trying to cross the Texas-Mexico border every year. So if you really want to speedrun Spanish, you could fly to Mexico and try to cross the border for fun while interacting with a ton of native speakers from all over Latin America along the way. You'd find yourself in very extreme situations, so you'd have to learn fast. And worst case scenario, you die. But if you don't, you'll be exposed to so many different accents. Speaking of which, one of the...
I wonder, do they have different accents in Mexico? That'd be interesting to figure out, because I mean, yes, if they have that many speakers, I didn't know the exact number. So if they have that many speakers, and then the landmass is big, you would expect absolutely. Let's have a look at the map very quickly. Okay, so yeah, I mean, for sure, look at the distances. So if you are from Mexico, do let me know how different the accents are between Mexico City, I want to say Chihuahua, Hermosillo, what else have we got? Guadalajara. Also, as a little fun fact, do you know where the word Mexico comes from? Most likely by the word the Aztecs used to define themselves, Mexica.
Speaking of which, one of the things that makes Spanish an excellent language to study is the vast array of unique and iconic accents that...
Look at the flags though. If we remove the American flag for a moment, which would be my favorite because of all the stars, because I'm all into stars like that. If we remove that, objectively the Spanish flag is the best looking one. Like, I don't even care. Hands down.
Exist in different countries. When you're a new Spanish learner, it's like Minecraft, where you have a blank slate with the opportunity to completely reinvent yourself depending on which accent you choose. Do you want to sound Mexican, Argentinian, Colombian, Chilean, Texan? The choice is yours, so pick carefully. Personally, I chose to learn the Spanish accent from Spain, mainly because I wanted to LARP as a metrosexual European businessman with a sophisticated lisp when I talked to Latinas in Florida. Walmarts. Because
you know what's crazy? Two things to say about that. First, I don't know why people call it a lisp, to be honest, because at the end of the day, it's an interdental, it's a fricative. And so at the end of the day, it's the same sound as think. So unless you think that when you speak English and say 30, you're speaking with a lisp and you should say 30, unless you think that, then at the end of the day, it's not a lisp. Yeah, so I like it, actually. I like it a lot. I like the sound. Regardless, let's talk about this thing that we call them Latins or Latino. Isn't that strange, though? Because at the end of the day, the Latini are the ancient Romans. In fact, if we look at the mythology of it, ideally, you had an original people that the sources in ancient Rome call aborigines, and then you, according to the myth, have the Trojans running away from the destruction of Troy. They mix together, create the Latins, named after the original king Latinus. Now, regardless of the mythology of it, yeah, Latins are the ancient Romans, so why aren't Italians called Latino at the end of the day? I'm not saying that I don't want Hispanics to be called Latino. Absolutely, be my guest, but we should be called Latino too. I mean, just saying.
Because contrary to popular belief, Latinas don't speak Latin. They actually speak Spanish.
Yeah.
But the opportunities are truly endless with all the accents. Allow me to give you a brief summary of the most notable ones to help you decide which to learn. Argentinian sounds like they're always singing, and it reminds me of what it would sound like if a bunch of Germans moved to South America and learned to speak Spanish with an Italian accent. Chilean speaks so fast that even just a simple hola uttered by a single Chilean in Santiago has the potential to break the sound barrier in Singapore. Cubans speak like they have a mouthful of Soviet nuclear missiles, and I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if they're not even actually speaking Spanish. Puerto Ricans mix Spanish and American so much that mi cerebro can't process lo que están saying. Spaniards sound kind of fruity, in a good way, with a gorgeous lisp, and they have very flamboyant personalities. Colombians sound really hot. I went on a date with a Colombian nanny last year, and her voice was like Uzbek to my ears, so sexy. And Mexicans sound really Mexican. I don't know how to explain it, it's just beautiful. So
you know what's interesting about that? So I really like the Madrid accent, and in general, I like Spain's Spanish accent. That would be my favorite, and of course it's the one that I try to mimic a little bit when I speak Spanish. Not that I can put it on correctly, but I'm saying you have to pick an accent when you try to speak a language. And again, I mean, I do it also because they are my neighbors, literally just around the corner from Italy. But with that being said, when it comes to the other accents, I don't remember what a Colombian sounds like, and I wouldn't be able to place a Mexican easily. I have an idea, maybe, but it might be stereotype a little bit. Also, is there a because I mean, he just said that there are a lot of people in Mexico, and it's relatively large geographically. So if you are from Mexico, tell me this, is the accent in Mexico City very different from the accent in, say, Guadalajara or other major cities in the country like north, south? Do you have that kind of distinction or no? So that would be something I'd be interested to know, because I have no idea. Also, when it comes to the Chilean thing, yeah, I did make a video once when I was trying to understand people speaking and they were from Chile, and goodness gracious, I could not. It was so fast. So he's right.
So take your pick. You really can't go wrong with any of them. And once you've chosen an accent, you can go start studying Spanish on Speakly, a language learning platform that I'd like to not even worth trying.
Smooth.
I'd just cancel it. Thankfully, all Spanish-speaking countries pretty much speak the same core language, except for Cuba, where they might actually be speaking Esperanto, but who knows? I've never understood a word any Cuban has ever said, and it's honestly not even worth trying. I won't succeed. So now let's talk about the alphabet. Spanish is written in a slightly modified version of the American alphabet, where for some reason they have two N's, and they put a little Cheeto puff on top of the second one. They also have goofy names for some of the classic letters, such as this E, which they call A, which is very confusing. And also the B and the V are pronounced exactly the same. Why the f? Also, in some countries,
I think it depends on the accent.
a few of the letters have different pronunciations. For example, in most accents, the J is pronounced like a wimpy little H, just like ha ha ha. But in the GigaChad country of España, it's pronounced rough and tough and manly, like you're choking on an enchilada. In most countries, the S, C, and Z are pronounced the same, like s, but in Spain, the C's and the Z's make the infamous and gorgeous lisp sound. El acento con la mejor pronunciación de la C. Y la zeta. In normal Spanish, the Y and the double L both make the Y sound, like y, but in Argentina, the Y and the double L make the sh sound. I like Argentina, but they gotta stop doing that.
They gotta stop doing that. What's really cool about Argentina is, as an Italian, it does sound a little bit like Italian, the intonation. So I always found that endearing.
The only real problem learners run into with the pronunciation is the rolled R, like rrrr. So many monolingual betas think they'll never be able to pronounce it, but if you listen to the following advice, you'll be able to do it instantly.
Please.
Simply pronounce an R, r, and now roll it. Rrrr. Did you get it?
It was actually pretty good, I've got to say. So when it comes to the rolling of R, what I noticed is a good word to see if you're doing it right would be the word Ferrari. Because in Italian, at least, there is a distinction in pronunciation between the single R and the double R, whereby the double R is really strong, R, and the single R is a much shorter and less intense sound, R. It's R. It's still trilled, so there still is that sort of pronunciation, but it's definitely different. So sometimes people exaggerate it. So there are people that just can't pronounce the R, and that's it. They can't roll it. But for people who can, sometimes they overcompensate. They do a hypercorrection, and then they say Ferrari. That's wrong. We wouldn't do that. So it sounds very unnatural. So Ferrari, Ferrari. Can you tell the difference between the double and single R in Italian?
Pronunciation isn't the only thing that differs between countries. Each country also has its own unique vocab, which can be confusing at times. There's innocent examples, like how in Spain this is called a coche, but in Argentina it's called an auto, and in most other countries it's called a carro. But
you know what's interesting about that? As an Italian, I would find two of these confusing. One of these confusing. Well, no, two. You know what's interesting about that? Is that as an Italian, two of these are actually kind of difficult. So auto, no problem. We use that word, pronounced exactly the same in Italian. It's usually, and that's interesting, but in my language, the word for car that is most commonly used is macchina. I know, right? It means machine, but that's what we say. Everyone says macchina in Italy. But if you want to be formal, you can say auto, la mia auto, absolutely fine. And so I would understand that. But carro, to me, sounds like something ancient or like medieval. So it gives me the idea that it's made out of wood, carro. And if you say coche, I wouldn't understand it, even though geographically Spain is the closest one. Isn't that crazy? And sometimes this happens, not always the case, of course, but sometimes like where they say ordenador, I wouldn't understand that, but computador, I would. So kind of depends.
But other times, the differences, especially with regional slang, may leave other speakers feeling very uncomfortable. For example, it wouldn't be uncommon for a Spaniard to say something like, Tío, me cago en la leche, tengo mucha pasta. And a Mexican could very well reply, ¿Qué pedo, güey? ¿Qué padre que tengas tanta lana? My Mexican accent is incredible. At least most of the vocab is the same between countries, and a ton of Spanish vocab was directly stolen from Americans, so it should be easy to learn. But the vocab won't be useful if you can't speak with proper grammar, and interestingly enough, even the grammar can differ between countries. For example, the word for you plural informal is vosotros in Spain, but it's ustedes in Latin America.
Really? Oh, that's so interesting, because yes, I would have said vosotros, vosotros. That's yeah, ustedes. Now that he says it, I actually feel like I heard it, but I didn't know it was regional. I thought it was just another way to say it. But yeah, I would definitely, you plural, I would say vosotros. That would be the one that I would use.
When I was dog water at Spanish in the beginning, I remember people used to make fun of me at Walmart and say I was pretentious or cringe for using vosotros as an American. Which was true, because I was literally
Excuse me.
lying and telling Latinas that I was from
Andalucía.
deep in the toilet paper aisle. Another example is how most normal countries like Mexico, Spain, and Peru use the word tú to mean you in the singular form, while a bunch of quirky countries, mainly Argentina and this chicken wing looking region of Central America, started using the word vos instead of
Really?
tú. And I am not a fan. If anyone online says or types vos to me, I block them instantly. Using vos would add a boatload of conjugations for me to learn, and I've already learned enough of them. According to my mathematical calculations, and keep in mind, I was an engineer for a year, each verb in Spanish has about 108 different potential forms it could take when conjugated. If you're a gigachad like me, this doesn't intimidate you and you'll learn them quickly, because there are indeed patterns. For example, a verb that ends in er, like the verb comer, to eat, will take on these endings when conjugated. But let's just focus on the present first person conjugation so you can see the pattern. To say I eat, you drop the er and add an o, yo como. For the verb beber, which means to drink, you drop the er and add an o, yo bebo. Easy, right? Now that you got the hang of it, you try one. Mantener means to maintain. Can you conjugate it like the others?
Probably not.
Wow, are you from Equatorial Guinea? You're right. Just drop the ER and add an O. Yo manteno. Wait, no, what the heck? No, that's wrong, you silly goose. You're lost. It's mantengo.
It's exactly the same in Italian. Exactly the same. So that's interesting.
Yeah, this language has a ton of irregular verbs, which normally wouldn't be too bad, but when I found out that this language not only has a subjunctive conjugation, but also a future and past subjunctive conjugation, I dropped my taco. If you don't...
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to finish it. So if you want to finish it, absolutely check him out and click the link in the description and in the pinned comment for the original channel where you'll find more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. Nos vemos.